what you focus on. The universe will provide. There is a force shaping your life right now, silent, invisible, and unbelievably powerful, and most people go their entire lives without ever realizing they are the ones controlling it. Every thought you repeat, every image you hold in your mind, every feeling you dwell on is not just passing time, it is creating direction. You are not just thinking, you are focusing, and that focus is acting like a command to life itself. Right now, in this very moment, your future is being formed by what you are giving your attention to. If your mind is locked onto fear, doubt, and limitation, then understand this clearly. You are unconsciously asking for more of it. But if you dare to shift your focus, if you begin to see what you want instead of what you fear, if you feel the reality you desire instead of the one you're stuck in, then everything begins to change. Because life does not respond to what you wish for, it responds to what you consistently focus on. And once you understand this, you will never see your thoughts the same way again. Your attention is not passive, it is creative. Most people move through life believing that they are simply observing reality, reacting to what is already there. But the deeper truth is this: your attention is actively shaping what you experience. Wherever your focus goes, energy follows, and wherever energy flows, something begins to form. Think about it. Out of the millions of things happening around you at any given moment, you only notice a tiny fraction. Why? Because your mind is constantly filtering reality based on what it believes is important. And what it believes is important is determined by what you consistently focus on. This means your attention is not just highlighting reality, it is organizing it. If you repeatedly focus on problems, your mind becomes highly efficient at finding more problems. If you focus on opportunities, your awareness expands to recognize possibilities that were always there, but previously invisible to you. So, in a very real sense, your focus is not just observing life, it is selecting and amplifying parts of it until those parts become your dominant experience. This is where creation begins. Creation does not start in the physical world. It starts in the mental world, with attention. Every invention, every success, every transformation first existed as a focused idea. Someone held it in their awareness long enough, consistently enough, that it began to take shape. The same principle applies to your personal life. When you hold a thought repeatedly, it becomes familiar. When it becomes familiar, it begins to feel natural. And when something feels natural, you start to act in alignment with it, often without even realizing it. These actions then produce results, and those results reinforce the original thought. This is the cycle of creation: focus, belief, action, result, reinforced focus. And it all begins with attention. Now, here is the part that most people overlook. Your attention is being pulled in different directions all day long. Social media, news, other people's opinions, past experiences, fears about the future. All of these compete for your focus. If you are not intentional, your attention becomes scattered. And when your attention is scattered, your results become inconsistent. That is why mastering your attention is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. Because when you control your focus, you begin to control the direction of your life. This doesn't mean you will never have negative thoughts. It means you no longer allow them to dominate your attention. You acknowledge them, but you choose where to place your focus next. And that choice changes everything. Imagine waking up each day and deliberately choosing what you will focus on. Instead of replaying problems, you focus on solutions. Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, you focus on what can go right. Instead of reinforcing limitations, you reinforce possibilities. At first, it may feel unnatural. That's because your mind is used to certain patterns. But with repetition, your new focus becomes your default state. And once that happens, your perception of reality begins to shift. You start noticing things you never noticed before. Opportunities seem to appear. Conversations change. Your energy changes. And people respond to that energy. It's not that the world suddenly transformed overnight. It's that your attention created a new lens through which you experience it. And over time, that new experience becomes your reality. So understand this deeply. Your attention is not something to take lightly. It is not just a mental habit. It is a creative force. Every moment you are focusing on something. Every moment you are feeding a thought. And every thought you feed is either building the life you want or reinforcing the life you don't. This is why awareness is the first step. Because once you become aware of where your attention is going, you gain the power to redirect it. And in that redirection lies your freedom. So guard your focus. Choose it wisely. Return to it consistently. Because your attention is not just observing your life, it is creating it. Thought alone begins the process, but emotion is what gives it power. You can think about something casually, briefly, without much impact. But the moment emotion enters the picture, everything intensifies. That thought is no longer just an idea. It becomes an experience. And what you experience internally is what begins to shape your external reality. Emotion is the fuel behind your focus. Think of your thoughts as a signal, but your emotions as the volume of that signal. A weak, emotionless thought sends a faint message. A deeply felt thought sends a strong, undeniable command, and life responds accordingly. This is why certain experiences in your life seem to manifest so quickly, especially the ones tied to strong emotions like fear, excitement, anger, or love. You don't have to repeat those thoughts 100 times. The emotional intensity behind them accelerates the process. Fear is a perfect example. When someone constantly worries about what could go wrong, they are not just thinking about it. They are feeling it. Their body reacts as if the situation is already happening. Their mind becomes consumed by it. And as a result, their attention sharpens around everything that could confirm that fear. They begin to act cautiously, speak differently, and make decisions based on avoidance rather than confidence. And over time, those actions lead to outcomes that reflect their fear, not because fear is magical, but because emotion drives behavior, perception, and focus all at once. Now flip that understanding. If fear, when combined with focus, can create unwanted outcomes, then imagine what intentional emotion can do when directed toward what you actually desire. When you focus on a goal, a vision, or a desired outcome, and you truly feel it, feel the excitement, the gratitude, the certainty as if it is already yours. You begin to shift your internal state. And your internal state influences everything. You think differently. You carry yourself differently. You respond to situations differently. And these subtle shifts begin to align you with the reality you've been focusing on. This is why simply thinking positive is not enough. If your thoughts say, everything is working out for me, but your emotions are filled with doubt, stress, and disbelief, then the signal you are sending is mixed. And mixed signals create mixed results. But when your thoughts and emotions are aligned, when you think it and feel it at the same time, that is when clarity is created. That is when your focus becomes powerful. Emotion turns imagination into belief. And belief is what drives consistent action. Most people wait for external results before they allow themselves to feel good. They say, I'll feel happy when things improve. I'll feel confident when I see proof. But this keeps them stuck in a cycle where nothing changes, because they are waiting for the effect before becoming the cause. The truth works in reverse. You must feel it first, not in a forced or fake way, but in a practiced, intentional way. You begin by imagining what you want, and then you allow yourself to feel the emotions that would naturally come with it. Even if it's just for a few moments at a time, those moments matter. Because every time you do this, you are training your mind and body to become familiar with that state. And what becomes familiar begins to feel natural. When it feels natural, you stop questioning it. When you stop questioning it, you start embodying it. And when you embody it, your actions align effortlessly. This is how emotion amplifies manifestation. It takes a simple thought and transforms it into a lived reality. first internally, and then externally. So the next time you catch yourself focusing on something, ask yourself not just, what am I thinking, but also, what am I feeling? Because your feelings are not random, they are signals. And those signals are shaping your life in real time. If you want to change your results, don't just change your thoughts. Elevate your emotions. Feel what you want as if it is already yours. Hold that feeling, return to it consistently. Because when thought and emotion move together, creation becomes inevitable. Your mind is not a passive observer of the world, it is an active filter. Every second, millions of pieces of information are available to you: sights, sounds, conversations, opportunities, risks, ideas. Yet you only become aware of a very small portion of it. Why? Because your brain is designed to filter out what it believes is irrelevant and highlight what it considers important. And what determines what is important? Your dominant focus. This means you are not seeing reality as it truly is. You are seeing a version of reality that has been filtered through your beliefs, expectations, and repeated thoughts. In other words, your mind shows you more of what you already focus on. If you constantly think, nothing ever works out for me, your brain begins to scan your environment for proof of that belief. It will highlight delays, mistakes, rejections, and missed opportunities. Even if positive things happen, they may go unnoticed or feel insignificant. Over time, this filtered perception convinces you that your belief is true. But here's the deeper truth: it's not that reality is objectively negative, it's that your mind is selectively presenting evidence that matches your focus. Now imagine shifting that focus. If you begin to think, things are starting to work in my favor, your brain starts looking for different evidence. It notices small wins, helpful interactions, unexpected opportunities. It picks up on possibilities that were always there, but previously filtered out. This is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about understanding that your perception is shaped by your focus, and perception shapes experience. Because what you notice influences how you feel influences how you act, and how you act influences your results. So when your mind filters reality in a certain way, it creates a chain reaction that eventually shapes your life. This is why two people can walk into the same situation and walk away with completely different experiences. One sees obstacles, the other sees opportunity. One feels discouraged, the other feels motivated. Same environment, different focus, different outcome. Your mind is constantly asking one question: what should I pay attention to? And it answers that question based on your past focus. This is why repetition matters so much. When you repeatedly focus on something, whether it's a fear, a goal, or a belief, you are training your mind to prioritize it. You are essentially programming your internal filter. And once something is programmed, your mind automatically begins to highlight anything related to it. This is both powerful and dangerous. Powerful, because you can intentionally train your mind to recognize opportunities, solutions, and growth. Dangerous, because if left unchecked, your mind will continue reinforcing negative patterns without you even realizing it. So the key is awareness. User must become conscious of what your mind is focusing on, and more importantly, what it is filtering out. Ask yourself, what am I consistently noticing in my life? Am I seeing more problems or more possibilities? Is my focus empowering me or limiting me? Because whatever you are noticing the most is a reflection of what your mind has been trained to filter. And the good news is, you can retrain it. You can start deliberately choosing what you want your mind to look for. You can shift your attention toward growth, progress, and potential, even in small ways. At first, it may feel like you are forcing it. That's normal. You are interrupting an old pattern. But with consistency, your mind adapts. It begins to accept this new focus as important. It starts highlighting different details. It changes what you notice, and therefore, what you experience. And over time, your reality begins to feel different. Not because the world changed overnight, but because your filter did. So understand this clearly. Your mind is always working for you, but it follows your lead. It amplifies what you focus on and filters out the rest. If you want to change your life, don't just try to change your circumstances. Chant what your mind is trained to see, because once your perception shifts, your experience follows. And when your experience changes, your reality begins to transform in ways that once seemed impossible. At every moment of your life, your mind is operating from one of two states: lack or abundance. There is no neutral ground. Even when you think you are just thinking, your focus is either expanding limitation or expanding possibility. And whichever state you consistently occupy becomes the lens through which you experience everything. When you focus on lack, your attention naturally gravitates toward what is missing. You begin to notice what you don't have, what hasn't worked out, what is delayed, what is unfair, and what feels out of reach. Even small inconveniences start to feel like confirmation that things are not going your way. Over time, this focus creates a mental environment where scarcity feels normal. And when scarcity feels normal, your decisions, emotions, and expectations all begin to align with it. This is how lack sustains itself, not through reality alone, but through repeated attention. But abundance works in the same way. When you shift your focus toward abundance, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. You start noticing what is already present instead of what is missing. You begin to recognize small wins, existing opportunities, supportive people, lessons learned, and progress already made. Even challenges start to look different, not as proof of failure, but as stepping stones toward growth. Abundance is not the absence of problems, it is the presence of awareness. Two people can live identical lives, face the same circumstances, and still experience completely different realities. One sees limitation everywhere, the other sees potential everywhere. The difference is not in what they have, it is in what they focus on. And here is the truth most people miss: your focus does not just reflect your reality, it shapes it. When you focus on lack, you unconsciously reinforce behaviors rooted in fear. You hesitate more, you doubt more, you hold back, you miss opportunities because your mind is already convinced that it won't work. And that internal belief becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. But when you focus on abundance, your behavior shifts. You become more open. You take more initiative. You notice possibilities that others overlook. You begin to act as if growth is possible. And that action creates movement in your life. Abundance is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is about choosing to see what is working alongside what is not. It is about refusing to let temporary conditions define your entire perception of life. Think of your attention like a spotlight. Wherever you point it, that area becomes brighter, more detailed, more dominant in your awareness. If you keep pointing it toward lack, your world will feel smaller, tighter, and more restricted. But if you begin to consciously redirect that spotlight toward abundance, your world starts to expand. This shift is not always dramatic at first. It begins quietly. You start appreciating small things. You start noticing progress you once ignored. You start feeling a subtle sense of gratitude, even in imperfect situations. And that shift in feeling changes your internal state. Because abundance is not just what you have, it is how you perceive what you have. Gratitude is one of the strongest expressions of abundance. When you are grateful, you are acknowledging that something already exists in your life. And that acknowledgement trains your mind to look for more of it. The more you appreciate, the more you begin to notice reasons to appreciate. On the other hand, constant comparison destroys abundance. When you compare your life to others from a place of lack, you are training your mind to believe you are behind. But when you observe others from a place of inspiration, you begin to see possibility instead of limitation. So the question is not just, what do I have? But how am I interpreting what I have? Because interpretation determines emotional state, and emotional state determines action. and action determines outcome. This is why focusing on abundance is not just a mindset, it is a strategy for transformation. It does not ignore reality, it reinterprets it. It does not deny challenges, it reframes them. And most importantly, it does not wait for circumstances to change before feeling better. It changes the inner focus first, which then influences outer reality. So if you want to shift your life, start by observing your focus. Are you feeding lack through repetition, complaint, and worry? Or are you feeding abundance through gratitude, awareness, and possibility? Because what you consistently focus on becomes the reality you live in. And when you choose abundance, truly choose it in your attention, your thoughts, and your feelings, you begin to experience a life that expands in ways you once thought were out of reach. Most people believe their life is shaped by what happens to them, by circumstances, timing, luck, or other people. But the deeper truth is that your life is not defined by isolated moments. It is defined by what you consistently return to in your mind. Circumstances may influence you temporarily, but consistency in your focus, thoughts, and responses is what ultimately determines your direction. A single thought does not create your life. A single emotion does not define your future. A single bad day does not decide your destiny. What matters far more is what you repeatedly think, repeatedly feel, and repeatedly expect over time. This repetition is what builds your internal state, and your internal state is what shapes your external reality. This is why consistency is more powerful than circumstances. Circumstances are temporary. They shift, change, rise, and fall. One moment things seem stable, the next moment they feel uncertain. If you base your mindset on circumstances, you will always feel unstable too, because you are depending on something that is constantly moving. But when you build consistency in your focus, you create stability within yourself, regardless of what is happening outside. Think of two people facing the same challenge. One reacts emotionally in the moment, fear, doubt, frustration, and then forgets about it, only to repeat the same reaction the next time. The other person also feels the challenge, but they consistently return to a chosen mindset, belief, calm, and direction. Over time, the first person is shaped by circumstances, while the second person reshapes circumstances through consistency. This is because repetition builds identity. You are not what you occasionally think, you are what you consistently think. You are not what you sometimes believe, you are what you repeatedly reinforce. And your identity is what drives your decisions, your actions, and ultimately your results. Even when progress is not visible, consistency is still working. This is where most people give up. They expect immediate external change, but real transformation begins internally first. And internal change often takes time to reflect outwardly. So when people don't see quick results, they assume nothing is happening. But in reality, every repeated thought and every consistent focus is quietly building momentum. Just like water slowly shapes rock over time, your consistent focus reshapes your reality. The challenge is that circumstances often try to interrupt consistency. A bad experience can make you question your progress. A delay can make you doubt your direction. A setback can make you feel like giving up. But these moments are not signs to stop. They are tests of whether your consistency is strong enough to outlast temporary conditions. Because circumstances are loud, but consistency is powerful. Circumstances scream for your attention. They demand reaction. They pull you into emotional responses. But consistency requires something different. It requires stability. It requires you to return to your chosen focus, even when external reality is not matching it yet. This is where true strength is built. When you consistently return to your vision, your belief, and your inner direction, you begin to create alignment. Your thoughts become more stable. Your emotions become more controlled. Your actions become more intentional. And slowly, your external reality begins to reflect that inner consistency. This is why success, growth, and transformation always look like repetition. It is not one big moment that changes everything. It is small, repeated choices made in the same direction over time. Consistency also builds trust within yourself. Every time you choose your focus over distraction, your belief over doubt, your direction over confusion, you strengthen self trust. And self trust is one of the most powerful forces in shaping your life, because it determines whether you follow through on what you decide internally. So the real question is not, what are my circumstances right now? But, what am I consistently returning to? Because whatever you return to again and again is what becomes dominant in your life. And dominance determines direction. Circumstances may influence your starting point, but they do not decide your destination. Consistency does. And when your consistency becomes stronger than your circumstances, your life begins to change in ways that once felt impossible. So, no matter what is happening around you, remember this truth. Keep returning to what you choose to believe, focus on, and embody. Because in the end, consistency always overrides circumstances.